We said we will have a panel discussion, and it's coming up after our last presentation. It's interesting to see that on our Facebook live stream and through the app, we're already getting first comments and questions, and many of them circle around access to this kind of technology. Now, you all know that DIY technology, at least the algorithm, is available for free, but it doesn't really help you much if you don't have the hardware, meaning the pumps, the supplies, or even the insulin, the test strips, etc., to be able to use it. As DIDOC, we have expanded quite significantly over the last couple of years, specifically during the pandemic when we turned virtual and were able to reach more and more advocates in countries that we have not reached before. This goes specifically for big countries like India and Pakistan, but also for all of the African continent. And access there takes a very different, or the discussion around access is a very different one than the one we are used to here in the Western world. It is my great honor to now introduce Hamidah Nabakka from Uganda. It's her first time at an international conference like this. We are honored to have you here. She will talk about her perspective on what it means to have access or not have access to diabetes technology. Please help me welcome Hamidah Nabakka from Uganda. The stage is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hamidah Nabakka. I'm a type 1 warrior from Uganda, Africa. I have been living with diabetes for the last 17 years. I work with the Sonia Nabeta Foundation, and below is my presentation. We believe in an Africa where children with type 1 diabetes have an equal chance at long, healthy, gainful, and productive lives. In Uganda, children with type 1 diabetes are at high risk of suboptimal health outcomes due to a variety of reasons, including low type 1 diabetes capacity, prohibits costs of essential medicines, and the failure to address the social determinants of health. Some of the social determinants of health includes poverty, social barriers, food insecurity, illiteracy to education, and optimal type 1 diabetes outcomes require carb counting, adjustable insulin dosages, but how when you can't read or count? That is stress. Stigma in communities puts warriors at risk, and that is stress. Schools discriminations against warriors, that is stress. Poverty is endemic and exhibits challenges with type 1 diabetes. How can you inject when you have no food? How can you find transport to clinic? That is stress. Moreover, available technologies like CGMs and insulin pumps require electricity and the internet, which are a luxury in low-income resource countries. Abject poverty, illiteracy, access to electricity, access to the internet, access to healthcare facilities, that's a luxury. In 2005, the whole of Africa had an international internet bandwidth than Luxembourg, a country the size of the states of Rhode Island. Africa's connectivity gap. Can a map tell the story? 2 decades later, despite progress, much of Africa is still unconnected, and large population cannot fully realize the benefits of connectivity. Pictures of some of our warriors in Uganda. And I take you through some of the stories of the warriors that we serve from very low income resource backgrounds. In Amolata, Uganda, 14-year-old, diagnosed in December 2017, born to a single mother that earns up to 5,000 Ugandan shillings, that's approximately $1.5 US. Selling tomatoes, father is deceased, 6 children in the family, all under the age of 15, 2 nights or week meals are less, anxious about resentment from siblings as mother prioritizes his food needs, fear of sleeping and dying of hypoglycemia, A1C 12.3%. Chiwamba Village, Lilongwe, Malawi, born to unemployed mother that raises 5 children. Father is a builder, diagnosed in January 2017, not in school and speaks no English. Travels almost 6 hours round trip to get medical supplies. Identified as one of the at-risk kids at Camp Tikoza, which was held in Malawi in 2019. Faints once a week, has night lows every day. Taking you to Ghana, where we have one of our warriors named Kumasi and Ankwame, diagnosed in December 2017, born to a polio-affected cobbler and a petty trader, earning a combined income of approximately $2.575 a day, frequently hospitalized and prohibited T1D cost forced the family of 5 into bankruptcy and homelessness. In June 2019, warriors enlisted at an orphanage, abstained from school due to T1D, currently not in school. About 17 years ago, when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I was misdiagnosed with malaria, sickle cell, anemia, went into DKA, coma, and I was subjected to herbal remedies in search for a cure. However, well-intentioned, struggled with loneliness and depression, and by the age of 17, I was out of school as my family had exhausted their financial resources. I was fortunate enough to be part of a SEA Games study in Uganda in 2022, which greatly improved my glycemic control. However, with load shedding, electricity to charge, it was unpredictable. I needed to get to the clinic in order to access the data. I had to hide it for fear of security. Once my participation in the study was over, I could not afford to continue with it. Improvements in infrastructure, for example, electricity and internet access, low cost of technology, for example, technology that is compatible with basic feature phones, enabling regulatory environment, subsidizing of costs of medical technology can be the future in Africa. We look forward to a world where children with type 1 diabetes have an access to productive and gainful lives. As the Sooner Better Foundation, the organization that I work with, and currently as an advocate, I have a YouTube channel where I'm going to be focusing on bringing the world closer to what it means to live with type 1 diabetes in Africa. And type 1 diabetes should never get in the way of a child's dream. Thank you, DIDOC Voices, and everyone.
Hamidah, thank you for sharing your story, your foundation's work, and also the stories of some of the others. At DIDOC, we always believe that these discussions around access, as far away as they seem in our normal lives here, are very important to bring back to conferences like this, not only because we then sit there and say, oh yes, that's a problem, and then kind of discard it saying, yeah, but that's not something we maybe can do something about it right now. Because some of the, if we translate some of the things we hear from Hamidah here, some of these things are really important and we can do something about it. And this goes specifically to people working in industry and research. So, and it's something that we may not be aware of, but when we hear Hamidah talk about load shedding, meaning that electricity is cut for many, many hours a day, then if you translate that back to development of diabetes devices, it means that these devices better have batteries that last for extended periods of time without needing recharge. And if we hear about Wi-Fi access basically not being available in most of the villages of rural Africa, it means that Some of the devices like follow-ups, etc., need to find other ways of being accessible in terms of, for someone like you, being able to access the data without having to rely on Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi will not be there for days or even weeks. And it's, I think, something that many people working in industry and research will not have at the forefront of their minds when doing studies and developing technology, but we should be able to hear these voices and make these technologies more accessible, not only on the DIY front, but on the other front as well, hoping that they will eventually find their ways into low-income countries as well. There are a number of comments right now. There's one that I would like to read. It comes from Tino Tsikiti. He is one of our DIDOC voices. He lives in Zimbabwe. He's following live right now. And I'll make it a bit shorter, but he says, in many of our low-income countries, chronic care services for diabetes and other severe conditions are only available at referral hospitals in major cities, making treatment both inaccessible and unaffordable for the rural poor population, for instance, in Zimbabwe and Mozambique, etc. As a result, many poor children and young adults go without treatment for conditions that almost always lead to premature death. One study found that life expectancy for children with type 1 diabetes in these settings is less than 1 year after diagnosis in much of sub-Saharan Africa. Less than 1 year after diagnosis. I think we do need to let this sink in and think about this and compare it to our almost spoiled realities here. I've lived with diabetes for over 25 years now, and some of you in here in the audience and up here, and then even amongst our DIDOC voices, have lived with diabetes for way more than 60 years. Martin, I'm looking at you. Compare that.